Episode 23, Acrobat and High Wire Artist Nik Wallenda. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Nik Wallenda. Nik is an acrobat, daredevil, high-wire artist, and an author. He is known for his high-wire performances without a safety net. He holds 9 Guinness World Records for various acrobatic feats, but is probably best known for walking a tightrope stretched across Niagara Falls. He's the author of a book entitled Balance, a story of faith, family, and life on the line. Nik, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me on.
It is my pleasure. What's the first memory you have of walking on a wire? How old were you?
Wow. I would say my first memory is, and it may be just from seeing photos, but about 18 months we were performing in California on a show called Circus Vargas. And my mom would grab my hand and help me walk on a wire that was 2 feet off the ground in the basically in the side lot of the tent there. And I would walk back and forth, of course, seeing my parents do it and have passion and love for walking a wire. I saw the excitement they had and wanted to be a part of it, and that's really where it all began.
Did I hear you right? We're talking 2 years of age?
Yeah, even under 2. I tell the story all the time. My mom was 6 months pregnant with me and still walking the wire. So longer than I've been on Earth, actually. But 18 months to 2 years was the time that I started.
Do you think, looking back, there was some sort of, family pressure to be in that business? Or was this, let's just expose you to it and then everything else is left to your own devices?
That's one of the things that me and my wife really worked on with our kids, is not exposing it to them too early. Because if anything, I started walking the wire at 18 months and continued to walk all the way, still to this day do, of course. But when I was 13 was my first wire performance. But as a teenager, my parents, and I talk about it a lot in my book, Balance, my parents really encouraged me to get out of the business and not carry on this tradition, which you would think, contrary to that, it's been in my family well over 200 years, 7 generations. You would think they'd push me towards it. But I think the challenge is I had that bug by then. I had that entertainment bug. I loved walking the wire. I loved entertaining people. And it was a struggle through my teen years of, am I going to go to college and give up this passion because my parents want me to give it up? Or am I going to carry on this tradition?
Well, I had read that you actually thought about college. You thought about becoming a doctor, but changed your mind at the last minute. So, was there some pivotal moment you recall? Or
There was. There definitely was. The reason why I was considering being a doctor was, and the reason my parents didn't want me to carry on the industry was because we all know of the starving artists. We hear the stories all the time, and that was what my parents dealt with. My great-grandfather Carl Wallenda said it best when he said that one day you eat the chicken and the next day you eat its feathers. That's our industry. You don't know from one day to the next what your paycheck is going to be. So I love children, love medicine. I was fascinated with that growing up, watching TV and medical programs, and thought, that would be a great way to support a family. If I can't support them walking a wire, that'd be a great way to do it. And it was something that I was very interested in. But I was actually ready to go to a university, and my parents' phone rang, and it was my uncle. And he said, we've been invited to go to Detroit, Michigan to recreate the 7-person pyramid. The first time since it fell back in 1962. This was in 98, we were called. That was a point where I kind of had to convince my parents, hey, allow me to be part of this, but I'm just going to do this and then I'm going to go off to college. And I ended up getting there and seeing that there was so much worldwide attention on our family recreating this pyramid that was catastrophic back in 62. 2 family members were killed. One of my uncles was paralyzed from the waist down during that accident. And to recreate it, everybody from Larry King Live, you name it. We were on every TV show around the world, documentaries from Japan, China, Germany. It was fascinating to see how much coverage. And it was at that point that I realized that our industry maybe wasn't dying, but it was changing. And it was, if I wanted to carry it on, I would have to change the way we were doing things. And that's really at that point, I was 18 years old. I was almost 19, I decided, you know what, I'm going to change the way that our family's been going, the direction they've been going, and I set out on a path to do what I've done.
Well, you're the seventh generation member of the Flying Wallendas. Is that right?
I am, that's correct.
And you mentioned two of them passed away, one of them seriously injured in that incident. So if you look over the last, through the history, I guess, of the Wallenda family, 7 generations, how many members have lost their lives?
There have been 7 members that have lost their lives, and from different things, not necessarily wire. My grandmother's sister's husband was actually climbing up a ladder and hit an electric pole on the way to the wire, and he was electrocuted and killed that way. One of a great aunt was on a sway pole, and she fell off of a sway pole. Of course, probably the most well-known accident, if not the 1962 seven-person pyramid fall, was in 1978 when my great-grandfather was walking between 2 buildings in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
So this high fatality rate, it didn't in any way deter you from getting into this profession?
It didn't. It's hard for people to comprehend, and I see that from the outside, but this is my life. My great-grandfather said it best, Carl. He said, life is on the wire and everything else is just waiting. And for our family, it's true. We've had other accidents. I'm sure we'll talk about them soon, personally related to me, including, this past February. And people don't understand, why would you continue to do it? But it would be like me telling an artist to stop painting. It would be telling Tiger Woods to stop golfing. That's their passion. That's what they do. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, there's risk, but the risk is relative, meaning there's risk in anything that you do. You can get killed just as easily driving in your car. You're not in control of the person coming at you head on, driving the wrong way down the road, or a drunk driver. You're not in control of fate is fate. When your day comes, your day is going to come. We practice very hard, train very hard to have safety plans, catch the wire. When I do my big TV specials and my big walks, there's always a safety crew nearby that can get to me really quick. Again, my whole life I've trained to catch the wire, and actually that came into play in February.
So I guess the question is, not that you've got a death wish. I understand you take a lot of precaution. There's a lot of training. There's a whole crew. But at the same time, there's very little margin for error. So are you prepared to die for this?
I'm prepared to die no matter what. My faith plays a key role in my life, and I'm very confident in what happens after I do die. That's a security that I think a lot of people envy me for, and we all have access to it, but some of us aren't necessarily in tune with that. So I'm completely confident in who I am and where I am in my life. I in no way feel like I have a death wish. Again, for the Grand Canyon, I train with 120-mile-an-hour winds. For Niagara Falls, I train with fire trucks spraying literally water that I couldn't even see. It was so thick on me as I was walking in 70-mile-an-hour winds. It's about training and preparing for the worst case so that I know that I can confidently take that first step on the wire. If I wasn't confident in what I did, I couldn't take that first step. And I'll tell you this, when fear comes in, if you can't control that fear, then you need to give up your career, no matter what it is. And that's something that I've always maintained is, fear is a choice, and it's up to us whether we're going to allow that fear to come into our mind or not. And it's up to us if we're going to accept that fear or if we're going to challenge that fear. I relate it to going into a haunted house. That you can go in there and be scared to death, or you go in there and say, hey, this is a haunted house and these people are paid to scare me, and I'm going to walk through it confidently and go out the other side just like I started in the beginning or before I entered. So, again, I don't feel like what I do is a death wish. This is my passion. This is what I love to do. Race car drivers, especially back in the day, were taking just as much risk as I am. But it's the reality of my life is, yes, there's dangers. But again, especially with society this day and age, you can go to the shopping mall. You don't know if that's going to be your last day. Look at the direction of our world. I'd rather live free doing what I love and what I have passion for than to live in a bubble.
Well, you mentioned controlling your fear. You can either let it enter your mind or you keep it out. So how do you do that? How do you keep fear at bay?
Yeah, it's certainly a process. A lot of it comes into when I'm on the wire, let's say, and I was over the Grand Canyon. I got hit with 53-mile-an-hour winds. Jim Cantori is part of my team. He is speaking directly to my father, who's my head safety guy, and I'm in direct communication with my father when I'm doing these walks. And my father will say, "You're okay, that was 53 miles per hour." And people say, "Why would he tell you it's 53 miles per hour?" Well, because I've trained for 120 mile an hour winds within that month. I've trained extensively. So what that does is it tells my mind, yeah, that was a lot of wind, but you've handled double that, more than double that amount of wind. You're going to be fine. People say that's impossible. How do you walk the wire with 120 mile an hour winds? Well, we bring in wind machines, and I literally will be standing sideways, not all the way over, but leaning into that wind on that wire. And then we'll create gusts and such. And again, it's all about being prepared and always being on edge. No pun intended, but always being on my toes of, hey, I know at any point I can get hit with this wind. But what I do is I counter that negative thought with a positive thought. And I try to practice that in life. As well, no matter what I'm dealing with, whether it be raising teenagers or any situation. When a dramatic situation arises, I see everything in slow motion, and I can kind of take it all in. I can absorb it, and then I can react to it. It's a gift or a talent or a blessing that I've been given. But when it comes to fear, again, it's all about not allowing that negativity to. It's going to come in your mind no matter what. We all know that proverbial, the angel on one side, the devil on the other. They're always arguing with each other. You just have to focus more on the bright side and counter everything that's negative with something positive.
I believe you once said that a high wire performance is not a daredevil act or a stunt, but rather an athletic feat requiring great physical training. So I want to talk about some of that physical training that's involved to do the types of walks that you do.
Yes, so obviously we've talked about me walking the wire my entire life, and so that part comes very natural. Now it's very much dealing with the mental part, of course, and always dealing with the negative thoughts that want to creep in your mind. Hey, you're 500 feet above Chicago, or over the Grand Canyon 1,600 feet, or Niagara Falls a couple hundred feet. But the physical part is something that I just do. Again, it's my passion. Tiger Woods doesn't just golf when he's on the PGA Tour. He golfs all the time because he loves doing it. That's the same with me. I am constantly on a wire. I have 3 different heights of wires in my backyard, which is where I do all of my training. And, it's an activity that I do with friends as well. There's a team of us that work together, and family. So it's actually a very good bonding time as well. But, instead of going and playing football, which I do that as well, or volleyball or golf, I like to spend time on the wire.
How much time are we talking about here, Nick? Are we talking an hour a day, 8 hours a day?
Leading up to an event, it'll be 8 to 10 hours a day on a wire. So a lot of extensive training. But on average, I'll spend probably 2 to 3 hours, 5 days a week on the wire. And it really is. People say, what can you do physically? How do you train? I do some weightlifting, etc. But really, the best thing you can do for being practicing being on a wire is get on a wire and walk over and over. A lot of repetition. And then also, again, creating whatever situations you might be in, whether it be heavy mist for Niagara Falls and some wind, or heavy winds over the Grand Canyon, or blindfolded over Chicago. What we try to do is simulate exactly the situation. We will rig a wire for the Grand Canyon 1,600 feet long. We'll rig a wire 1,600 feet long, but lower to the ground, and I'll train on that. So for the Grand Canyon, I walk that wire 3 times forward and backwards without stopping, the exact same distance, the same tension. And the reason why I do that is so that when I get in that situation, again, when that negative thought comes in, wow, there's quite a bit more distance to go, and you're 1,600 feet up, I can say, so what? I've done this backwards and forwards 6 times, 3 times each in a row without stopping. Of course I can do it once straight across. All about, again, being, if it's possible, over-prepared. And it isn't possible. You can't over-prepare for these sort of things. But that's kind of the goal, is to aim towards that.
So it sounds like the physical training is as much about the mental aspect as it is the physical. Just convincing yourself you can deal with all of these elements.
Absolutely. When I'm on the wire, it is walking on a wire in the perfect setting with the right tension, etc. It is the same as walking on the ground to me. There is no different, because I've done it so long. I've walked on the ground. Basically, I've walked on a wire as long as I've walked on the ground. So for me, it comes very natural. Now, when you throw in the elements and such, the tensions are different, the distances and the winds and the mental aspect, total different ballgame. But just walking a wire, that part becomes, again, very, very natural to me.
Let's talk about Niagara Falls, because I think a lot of people are familiar with that one. Probably a lot of people saw it on TV. What special challenges did that particular walk present?
So Niagara Falls, the biggest challenge for Niagara Falls wasn't the walk itself. It wasn't rigging the wire. It wasn't the winds. It wasn't the heavy mist. It was actually getting permission to do the walk. That's one of the things that I love more than anything about what I do is there's so many elements to it that people don't see. So there's a law in the United States that's over 100 years old that says no stunting in Niagara Falls. And there's the same in Canada. So in order to get permission to do that walk, I had to convince the government to allow me to do it, which was extremely challenging. I had to first start it at a senator's door. Senator George Maziarz knocked on his door, said, can we have a meeting? He said, absolutely. We sat down, told him what I wanted to do. And he said, I think you're crazy. I don't think this is going to happen. But, nice thought. And I remember leaving that meeting, and he was the third most powerful senator in the state at the time. He's since retired, and he was over that region. So I thought, where else do you go? What else do you do? So I went back to Florida and began thinking a bit, and I thought, I wonder if I can prove to them with an economic impact study how beneficial this would be to the region. I tried to start thinking like a politician. What will convince them to be interested in making this happen? And of course, being an economic impact, something positive on the region, is something that is great for a politician, and for them to be able to say that they'd be a part of it. So we hired a company. We did a bunch of research, me and my team, and found the company that the government uses to do their economic impact studies, and we hired them. And they did a study and found that it would be about a $25 to $30 million economic impact the day of the event. And with a legacy effect, it was going to be about $120 million economic impact. So over the next 5 years, with the amount of media coverage that we would have, which is still going to this day, that the economic impact would be massive.
That's all sort of benefits, to the region. But why did you choose Niagara Falls of all the places?
Yeah, so since I was about 4 years old, my parents were visiting. They were actually performing in Buffalo, New York with the Shrine Circus, and they brought me and my sister, as they did wherever we went, to the local attractions, whether it be the Battle of Gettysburg or whether it be Niagara Falls. So they brought us to Niagara Falls, and it was at that point that I looked across and thought, man, why don't you try to walk a wire across here? Of course, there was the history of Niagara Falls as we visited, which there was a wire walker named Blondin and many others that had walked over the gorge about a kilometer downstream of the falls, but no one had ever walked directly over Niagara Falls. So it was kind of at that point, at that age, that I thought, this is something that's pretty awesome. I'd love to walk across this. Or not me, I just figured it would be fascinating for one of my family members to walk across. Interesting enough, as I was training there after getting the permission, we'll go back to that, a family member came over from Germany, which is where my family originated, and they brought a picture. And it was a picture that my great-grandfather Carl sent them when he was visiting Niagara Falls, and he sent it back to Germany. I never knew until about 2 weeks before the walk that my great-grandfather had the same vision of walking over Niagara Falls, which was chilling. Clearly, following in their footsteps in a huge way, or my great-grandfather's, which what I do is about honoring my family legacy, of course. But anyways, the idea had come to me at a young age, and I'd done research through the years, realizing that it was going to take quite a bit of it was going to be quite a challenge in order to get permission. The reason why it was fascinating to me, and I think to other and I don't consider myself a stunt man, but you look at these people that go over barrels and that they really call them stunters, or the law is no stunting. I think it's fascinating because just the power of the falls. There's just something alluring about it. It's just beautiful. The roar of the falls is intimidating. The heavy mist, the millions of gallons that are pouring over every minute. All of that is just fascinating to, I think, to anyone. That's why it is a huge attraction. But to somebody that does what I do, and it clearly creates a beautiful, beautiful backdrop. But really, the reason why it was a thought was, again, no one had done it. That's kind of what my family's been known for doing, is things that no one's ever done before.
Was that particular walk, you think, the most physically demanding you've done, or was that sort of par for course for you?
No, I think it was certainly mentally demanding more than physical.
In what way?
The roar of the falls themselves are overwhelming, intimidating to say the least. So that's the beginning of it. And then you see the mist. You don't know what you're going to experience in the middle of the falls as you make your way out there. No one had ever been there. I've talked to helicopter pilots leading up to it who had to do rescues in the area who say the winds are just uncontrollable. They're coming in every direction, whether it be an updraft. There's an updraft at one point. There's a downdraft at one point. Depends on where you're at on the falls, because it's just, again, it's a giant machine. So it's very intimidating, not knowing what to expect when I get out to the middle. I was sitting out by the falls the day before the walk with my father, looking over the falls on the U.S. side, and thinking, what am I going to experience when I get to the middle of this? I trained. I put giant fans that create 40, 50 mile an hour winds underneath me, blowing up, to see what that would be like. Put them above, blowing down, and walked. Just kind of trying to experience the worst of the worst. If you've been to the falls, there's a huge plumage of mist in the middle, to the point where it is you can barely see through it. In fact, I have a photo when I took off that from the platform I took off from as I was getting on the wire, and you couldn't see Canada through that photo because there was so much mist as I walked from U.S. to Canada. But I sat there on the edge with my father. We looked across, and I said, Dad, my only concern is out there in that mist. How strong is that updraft going to be? Have I prepared enough? Is there enough? And we'd done studies and followed the mist and figured out what the mile per hour was in that area, etc. But he said, watch that. Watch that seagull as he flies through. There's a lot of seagulls in the area. Watch as he flies through the mist. Just watch, and he's going to coast through. And I sat there and watched, and I watched him fly up to the mist, and then he just sort of just drifted right through. And as he went through, he didn't necessarily shoot straight up in the air like you would think. If it was 100-mile-an-hour winds, as he drifted through, the 100-mile-an-hour winds would catch his wings and shoot him straight up in the air, at 100 miles an hour. But he kind of just drifted through with pretty much ease. And it was at that point that I could relax and went, okay, you know what? You're right. I'm going to be fine. It's not going to be too hard. The wind's not going to be too strong. Now, the walk itself was challenging. There was a lot of movement in the cable. No one had ever rigged a cable in wire walking history that had no stabilizers whatsoever on it. Generally, when we do these walks, there's a stabilizer, ropes coming off left and right every 30 to 50 to 100 feet. They keep that cable from swaying back and forth. I'd also always walked my entire life on a cable the size of a nickel, 5/8 of an inch. And the cable that I had to walk over Niagara Falls was 2 inches. And the reason being was the weight of the cable would help stabilize it and slow down the motion. So there was a lot of new feelings for me. The feeling of a 2-inch wire on my feet was uncomfortable. The placement of feet, the wire was obviously soaking wet. I was dealing with the winds, the sound, the roar of those falls. Everything becomes extremely intimidating.
And by the way, let's not forget millions and millions of people watching every step that you're taking.
Yes, exactly. And I will tell you this, when you get in a zone, you don't even think about the people.
What do you think as all these elements are happening at once?
Really don't. That definitely goes away. Once you get in a zone, most of that goes away. Now, when you get hit with a gust of wind, 50, 60 miles an hour, that's when that wakes you up quick. But for the most part, as far as the public watching, etc., I've been in entertainment my whole life, so I love performing for people. That's clearly the goal. And my goal has always been to inspire people. So the more people that are watching, hopefully the more people are inspired. Not to walk a wire over Niagara Falls, but to be inspired that nothing's impossible.
But when you're in that zone, what does that mean in terms of what's going through your head? Is it just focused on the next step?
Yeah, when I'm in a zone, I'm certainly focused on the next step. I'm focused on my surroundings. I'm focused on my training. I tell the guys, I train people to walk the wire at our training facility in Florida often. And I tell them that when they're training, put themselves in the element they're going to be facing. So in other words, if you're training on a wire 2 feet off the ground, put your mind 30 feet off the ground if that's where you plan on going. And put your mind in the arena that you're going to be performing in. Focus on all of that stuff as you're training. And then once you get to the arena, put yourself back 2 feet off the ground in your backyard. That's where I try to get guys to focus back on your training, because your training is what's preparing you for what you're doing. Don't let your mind go and allow you to be fearful of what you're facing.
Well, you prayed out loud during much of that walk. Is that pretty typical when you're doing these?
It is. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I practice in life in general, whether I'm on the wire or whether I am, dealing with any stresses of the world. So, yeah, I mean, that's how I choose to find peace, is in my faith. Again, that's what keeps me calm.
Are you praying that somehow God is going to protect you from falling? Is that it, or is it?
No, I mean, you can watch the videos and see. No, I'm praying mainly for peace because, again, the mind is powerful. I don't in any way, I do believe God could keep me up there, but I also believe that we all make our own decisions in life. We also have to pay the consequences for the decisions that we make. So in no way do I believe that God is magically holding me up on the wire, but I believe in the Bible, and the Bible talks about God providing a peace that passes all understanding. And if there is one thing, the greatest challenge of what I do is losing my peace. So I trust that God provides that peace for me. It's a form of meditation. I believe that God is very practical, and in this day, very popular is yoga and meditation, etc. It's basically a form of my faith. I choose to speak to who I believe created the universe, confidently believe that. Again, God is very practical, so it applies to anyone. It's just a form of meditation. I often will, and I think a lot of people will, I'll talk verbally out loud when I have that negative thought come in my mind. I consider a negative thought like a weed growing in your garden. If you don't pull that weed out of your garden, eventually it will take over your garden and you won't have a garden anymore. So it's important to grab that weed before it grows and sprouts. And that's the way that I treat life. That's what I treat any traumatic or dramatic or challenging situation.
Well, I don't want to challenge your faith at all, but when people in your family have lost their lives, how do you reconcile that, with religion? Or do you think they're not at crossroads in that sense?
I have no problem dying today. If I got shot and killed as we speak right now, I have no issue. I will tell you, I have no fear whatsoever of dying, none whatsoever, because I'm so confident in my faith and who I am in Christ, and that's all that matters. Again, some of the most religious, and I don't believe faith is about a religion, and I don't believe, again, even my relationship with Jesus Christ is not about my religion, but I believe that we all make our own decisions. It's up to us to decide whether we're going to get on that wire. We decide whether we're going to get on the airplane. We decide if we're going to go to the mall, and who knows who's going to be in that mall, and how we could lose our lives. So are we testing God by going to the mall? Are we testing God by leaving our house? No, I don't think at all. Again, this world is a torn place, and God created us. I believe that God is in control. God is in charge, and we're in control. That's what I believe. We're in control of the decisions that we make, and it's up to us. Again, it's up to me. God didn't tell me to get on the wire. I decided to get on the wire, and I believe that applies to all of us.
I want to talk about another walk you did. In 2011, you completed a 120-foot high, 100-foot long high wire crossing between two towers of a hotel in San Juan, Puerto Rico. It was nothing extraordinary as far as Guinness setting world records that you're known for, but this particular walk was special because it was the exact walk that your great-grandfather Carl attempted when he fell to his death in 1978. Was this one pretty emotional for you?
Certainly, people ask me often, what's your favorite walk, the favorite walk you've ever done? And I've, as you've said, many world records, a lot of worldwide TV specials, hugely successful TV specials. My last special was shown live in 270 countries around the world. That's never been done for a stunt, if you will, which of course many people refer to what I do as a stunt. So that walk was a dream that I always wanted to do. My great-grandfather is a huge inspiration to me and my family, and I always wanted to recreate that walk. I never thought I'd be able to get permission to recreate that walk because clearly the hotel is still owned by the same company that was owned by in 78. My great-grandfather lost his life there. This day and age with liabilities and lawyers and legalities and all that, it's a lot more challenging to get permission than it was when my great-grandfather was walking. It was the most emotional walk I'd ever done. To be able to walk in his footsteps and recreate and sort of to kind of show the world that, hey, the Wallendas are still going. As I said, I do what I do to inspire people. To be able to go right back into that situation and recreate that, hopefully inspires people that whatever challenges they're facing, whether mentally, physically, or emotionally, that anything is possible.
I want to go back to a quote you mentioned earlier of your great-grandfather, Carl. Life is on the wire. Everything else is just waiting. Do you feel the same way?
Absolutely. Look, this is my passion. I keep saying it, but it's like telling Michael Jordan to stop playing basketball. It's what he does. It's not like he does it for his career. Yes, he's made a career out of it, but he's got a full court. He's retired. He's got a full court in his house because that's what he loves doing. I think that's one of the challenges. I think my great grandfather, I believe, and from studies that we've done with geriatrics doctors, his age played a role in him losing his life.
Does that make you pause in terms of how long you're going to do this for?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think your mind tells you you're young and you're still able to do it no matter what, but doesn't necessarily work that way. My great grandfather lost his life for two reasons. One is the wire was rigged different, uniquely to the way it had ever been rigged for him to walk on. And he didn't train that way. I talked about the stabilizing wires that come off left and right off of the cables that we walk on. Generally, they're tied directly to the cable. They come off left and right. They keep that wire from swaying back and forth. Well, for some reason, the guys that rigged his wire didn't rig it directly off the cable. They came down about a foot vertically, and then they came off left and right like a Y, an upside down Y. And what happened was that wire moved left and right quite a bit, more than he's used to. And he did everything that he taught and that we've been taught, which is go down and grab that wire and hold on. He was 73 years old. He had a couple injuries recent to that and didn't have the strength to hold on. When the time came, we also believe that his heart, after doing some studies, that at that age, your heart isn't able to accept as much blood that needs to be pumped into it when you have that much adrenaline. And because of that, we believe that his heart possibly played a role in it. But initially, the wire was rigged improperly. So he went down to it, grabbed it, heart started pumping because of adrenaline, couldn't hold on and lost his life. So because of that, yeah, there's definitely going to be a time I'll retire. However, I can guarantee you I'll still have a wire 2 feet, maybe 5 feet in my backyard until the day I die, and I'll still be out there walking on it because it's what I love doing.
So can anybody do what you do if they work hard enough, or do you feel you have some type of special gift?
I would tell you that anybody, and I confidently believe this, and I think my kids are proof of that because I've instilled it in their minds, I believe that anyone can do anything if they set their minds to it. So the answer is absolutely, yes, anyone can walk the wire. I believe that wholeheartedly. And again, I believe that anybody can do anything and accomplish any goals in life and overcome any challenges, the biggest of challenges. But it's about setting your mind to it. My grandmother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. They gave her 3 months to live. She was 77 years old, and she lived 5 more years. And I can tell you that she treated cancer like a headache. She didn't accept the fact that it was going to take her life. She thought of it as just another headache and it'll go away. And because of that, the doctors, and there's been many studies that prove this, but it's the power of the mind. Our minds are powerful. And it's up to us whether we're going to accept that disease or we're going to deny it and and live life normally. It's the power of a positive mind. It works. I can't explain it. I don't know why, but it works.
But has that relentless drive, that belief in yourself, the never give up attitude, that mantra that you live by, has that always been there?
No, I think it's something that I've grown into, for sure. I think that through the challenges that I've overcome and after coming through those, I think everything in life happens for a reason. And in my book, I talk about a lot of the setbacks. It wasn't as though I had this glorious walk through life and everything went great. There were many, many setbacks in life, and many times where, again, including that first meeting with the state senator trying to change the law in New York to walk across Niagara Falls. The meetings didn't always go great, but through a series of being, I'm competitive, which I think is important for I think you'll find that in any successful business leader. They're going to be competitive. They're going to have a passion for what they do, and they're going to have a major drive for what they do. And I think with those 3 elements, anything is possible, but it came with time. Now, I've always been competitive, always had drive and passion, of course, but I think the confidence part is what came with time.
Well, let's talk about the book. The title is Balance, and balance appears to be a recurring theme throughout your life. Thought maybe you could talk about that a bit.
Yeah, my book really talks about balance between life, being a husband, being a father, and of course, walking the wire and the challenges of balancing business and being home for your kids, especially when you do what I do and you travel a lot for a living, but being a present, and being involved in my kids' lives as well. I think balance is very, very important in everybody's life. At what point do you put down, do you close the computer or close the laptop down and go home to spend time with your kids? And I think that is a struggle that we deal with this day and age more and more because we're all sort of becoming driven to success, I think as a society. And, it's easy to to have, of course, as a boss, to have high demands on your employees. I look at the success of a lot of companies in America, and there's several in Europe where they value time with families, and many of them are excelling because they are telling their employees, you're going to work your 8 hours and you're going to go home. I think that we have too much demand, even in the schooling system. I feel like there's so much in our educational system in the United States. There's not a balance of being a kid and your education. I feel like, kids are in school way too long every day, that they're wasting. There's so much time wasted. My daughter, all my kids went to school in Florida. However, I have a 14-year-old that is now homeschooling because I'm touring this season. So she's traveling with us and homeschooling. And since she's been homeschooling, we have a private tutor that travels with us that works with her. Her schooling is done in 3 hours every day, and then she'll read for an hour. So in 4 hours, and her grades are excelling. I think, again, because she's not getting distracted. I know that the way my mind works, after 4 hours, I'm done, and my mind's shot. So forget it. And I think as a society, we need to figure out what that balance is. In the way that we raise our kids, and again, in the way that we're present with our kids. And, it's a challenge that I certainly dealt with my kids. And I've been blessed. I have a 19-year-old that is a Marine that I couldn't be more proud of, that's serving our country. I have a 16-year-old that is in high school right now playing high school football, that has dreams and aspirations of playing in college, which I believe that he will be there in the next couple of years. And, of course, my 14-year-old daughter. But again, I dealt with the challenge of that drive, too, of being successful and not being present enough with my family. And it took a realization of, I need to be with my family much more. The way I was raised was traveling with circuses all over the country, and I was with my parents all the time. And I think there's struggles there of balance too. Sometimes you can be there too much, because I was homeschooled through a lot of my middle school and high school years. So, again, balance is a struggle that we all deal with. And I talk in my book a lot about the struggles that I dealt with and how I was able to find balance in life.
Yeah, you mentioned the struggles with money, struggles with the marriage, with your ego. So I guess the question is, when you have these challenges you're facing off the wire, so to speak, do you seek outside help, or do you turn inside yourself?
Yeah, I think it's important that we have positive people and mentors in our life, no matter what, people that we can talk to, that we can rely on, that have that experience, that have been there before us. I think about growing up as a teenager and my dad saying, don't do that, and me being a teenager, rebellious, going, well, I'm going to do it anyways. And I think we all deal with this. We get to a point where we become adults and we go, now we're telling our kids, don't do that, and they're rebelling against us. But we look back at our parents and go, wow, life would have been so much easier if I would have just listened to dad and mom when they said that. I wouldn't have dealt with all of these setbacks. So, I think that's all part of it.
So what's left in your wire walking wish list? How do you top something like Niagara Falls and the Grand Canyon?
Oh man, it's endless. I will have visions in the middle of the night of like, that would be an amazing walk. There's a couple of them that are very, very important to me. I would say the biggest challenge that I'm facing, that I'm working towards now, and I've got a team doing research, finding a location, is I want to walk over an active lava flow, so hopefully a volcano, with lava flowing underneath. So I have some scientists working on and engineers working on finding locations, as well as the details as far as dealing with sulfuric acid, how high I have to be because of heat, and all of those calculations. But that's probably that's the big one that I'd like to do before I put down the balancing pole per se. I will tell you that I cannot see myself doing this for more than, I am 38 now. I've always said 55. I would guess I'll be done doing anything major. I'll still be speaking in public, do a lot of motivational speaking events for businesses, and I'll still be walking on wires, but not nearly as high as I have been. As I told you, for my entire life, I'll continue to do that. But within the next, I would guess by 50, I'll be done, if not before then.
So looking back, any regrets in your life? If you could do it all over again, anything you would have done differently?
I feel like every negative experience has led me to where I am today and given me that drive and that passion. During those experiences, during those hard times, during those struggles, I would obviously give them up and not want to go through them. But looking back on them, I think that everything that I've gone through, including marital problems, including health issues with children, etc., those have all led me to be who I am today. And I wouldn't be the Nik Wallenda that I am if I didn't go through those experiences. And I wouldn't have the love and passion that I have for people and for success and for motivation if it wasn't for those experiences. So I'm thankful for everything that I've been through.
What doesn't kill us makes us stronger.
That's very, very true.
The name of this podcast is The Art of Excellence. What's your definition of excellence?
Wow. Definition of excellence. Excellence is tough to achieve. I think that's a goal that I'll always reach for, but I don't know that I'll ever become, in my opinion, in my mind, the imminence of excellence. I think the small things are what matter. I think the way that we treat people matters way more than walking over an active volcano. The way that I treat everyday people on the street, whether they be sitting on the side begging for money, you never know who you're talking to or who you're dealing with or what struggles they've gone through. I have a son who's a Marine, so I have a passion for our veterans and the things that they've done, the sacrifices they've made for our country and for our freedom. I have a passion for people like that are hurting. And I think that excellence comes out, in my life at least, off the wire. It's not about being on the wire. What I've done on the wire has been a blessing, and it's given me a platform that I can help raise awareness and raise money for people that are struggling and for veterans. But I think excellence happens in our everyday life. And I think excellence is the way that we treat the everyday person, whether we like them or not.
Is it true after the Niagara walk, you came back the next day and spent like half a day cleaning up trash?
It is true. Yeah, and I'll always be that person. People are often shocked. I perform all over the world. I've built a name, hugely successful in the TV world, and a brand that is worldly wide recognized out of a brand, the Wallenda family, Flying Wallendas, etc. But I've built the Nik Wallenda brand through that. But after every performance, no matter where I am in the world, I'll go down, I'll sit in the audience, and I'll talk to the last person. I'll shake hands with the last person leaving. Every performance, I'm performing in New York City currently. After every show, I go out in front. People don't do that this day and age, and to me, that's what keeps me humble and keeps me real. I'm no better than anyone else because I've been this successful and I have these many world records. We're all created equal, in my opinion. We all die. We all have the same results. We all get buried 10 feet under. So again, to me, there's nothing different about me. There's nothing better about me. So how am I supposed to affect people if I'm not one-on-one in a one-on-one relationship with them? So, and again, that's what keeps me humble, going back and cleaning up the trash, being part of the rigging team. I help set up my own wire. I don't need to do that. I've got guys that can do that all day long in their sleep, engineers, teams of safety, et cetera, et cetera. I don't need to do that, but I continue to do that because I always want to remain who I am.
Well, I don't know if lucky is the right word, but you're incredibly fortunate because you found your passion when you were young and you've essentially lived your entire life pursuing it. And I can't tell you what minuscule percent of the population can say that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes from passion. I think again, when you find when you study and research successful people, fortunate people, lucky people, we can call them blessed people, that they surround themselves with positive people. It's so easy for me to go to my friend and say, you know what, I'm going to open up a pizza parlor in town. And my friend will immediately say, why would you do that? Hungry Howie's, pizza, there's Papa John's, there's successful pizza restaurants everywhere. Why would you do that? I want to be the type of friend that says, you should go do that, but you should do it better than anyone else, and you're going to be more successful than anyone else. So many people are on the verge of success when they give up. And that's why I live by those words, never give up, and encourage everyone, continue to pursue your passion. People don't pursue their passions because of fear and because they give up too soon. And usually it's fear that causes them to give up.
I love it. That's incredible advice. Nik, you've had an amazing career. You're incredibly humble, especially coming from someone who's had the success you've had. And I can't thank you enough for being part of this program.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I look forward to speaking with you again in the future.
Wonderful. Likewise. Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. You can subscribe to the show at iTunes, Stitcher, and theartofexcellence.com. I've got one small favor to ask. If you like the show, please take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes. I would really appreciate that. I'll see you next time.